good, everyone? It's Romero17. Today we're going to be covering how to create angles on UFC 4. Now, before we get to all the fun stuff, we got to go over the basic fundamentals. So the first thing you got to do, you got to be able to understand lunges. There's 4 types of lunges in this game: the back lunge, the forward lunge, and then going left and right, which should be up and down on the right stick. You can use the left stick, but for fighters that have signature lunges, which is with LS, you got to use the right stick. So that's what we're going to be focused on. And they're mainly used for evasion, to drain your opponent's stamina and to open up windows to counter. Primarily, we're going to see people using up and down, so that's going to be our main focus today on this video. So if you're using lunges, you're going to be looking to lunging away from your opponent's strike. So if I see Pedro Munoz here throwing a head kick, I'm going to lunge away from it. And if I input the proper action at the right time, it does a lot of damage and opens up a huge counter window. You can also use the lunges to mitigate damage. So if I lunge away from a body kick, I take less damage. It can give me the opportunity to counter with a big strike of my own. If you actually lunge away from a leg kick, so in this case I'd be going right stick and down, and I like this one better than the back lunge against the leg kick because this one can allow you to hit your opponent before they're able to block if you do it with proper timing, whereas the other one, there's a little bit too much time and your opponent can land if you try to just back lunge away from a leg kick. So you can try this out as well if you're lunging away from a leg kick. So now that we've gone over the basics, we're going to go over to the first step with creating angles. Now, you don't actually have to use any lunges here. It's just going to be head movement and walking to the same side. If you do this correctly with proper timing, your opponent's actually going to lose their tracking mid-combo, because back in November, they improved side slips by applying the loss of opponent's tracking when walking and slipping to the same side to the outside of strikes. So I'm going to show you an example right here, right? We got Munoz here throwing the rear overhand, and what I'm going to do is, as I slip to that side and I successfully evade the strike, I'm going to continue holding the left stick, and it's going to force Munoz to lose his strike. So if he were to continue with like a lead hook or a lead uppercut after that rear overhand, guess what? It's not going to touch me at all. And this is something that's really underutilized. I've been able to use it a lot against my friends in my spare time, and trust me, this is really sneaky. So even against like a strike, like say a forward moving 1-2 head kick, right? I'm going to slip to the outside and watch Aldo. He continues walking that direction. He pivots his feet. Munoz is committed to that kick, so he loses the track. And if you get too close, it actually forces the opponent to kind of reset their position. I don't really like that. I prefer sometimes just to let them fully commit and just let them pay for it, but it is what it is. And even against a planted 1-2 head kick, as long as you slip to the outside and you continue to walk in that direction, you're going to force them to mix because they're staying on that same center line, and you're continuing to walk out of range, and it gives you the window to counter. So if they're in the opposite stance, it's the same logic, right? You want to slip that rear straight strike, whether it's going to be the cross or it's going to be the rear uppercut. Those are the best 2 strikes to do this against. And in the open stance matchup, it's actually a lot easier to force them to crowd. And I usually like to throw like the rear hook or rear body hook or lead body hook when it comes to that. So if you're going to do this against combinations, this is really the big one. Again, same logic. If it's that rear hand strike, this is the best thing to do on a basic level against somebody coming forward. So I'm going to throw this meta combo with Munoz, right? Jab, jab, straight lead hook, right? I'm going to slip to the outside, continue holding the left stick, and he lost his tracking. So now his lead hook is not going to hit me. Now, normally, say if I try to do like a slip counter, right? I try to slip to the body. Look, his lead hook hit me because I'm still right in front of him even though I move my head. Now watch this. I'm going to slip to the outside, continue to walk, circle with that lead body hook, and I'm out of the center line. Watch it one more time. That he's still going. I'm cutting an angle around him, and I'm nailing him to the body with some body hooks, and it is absolutely devastating. And in opposite stance matchups, if you're going to use this and you want to counter effectively from this, I would recommend that you go with a rear hand strike, mainly because it just works a lot better. It's a lot smoother. Good example would be watching Usman landing his rear body hooks against Colby Covington in their fight. And the weakness with this regular, just kind of moving your head out of the way and continue to walk, you're kind of weak to double jabs and you're weak to hooks. Most recently, the best example we just saw was Rob Font versus Cody Garbrandt. He kept working that jab effectively in his face, and Cody wasn't using anything other than his head. So I kind of hurt him there. And even at the hooks, right? The hooks really kind of trap you there, and Cody did a good job at that against Cruz. And also vice versa, Cruz did a good job of using the jab against Cody when he was able to. So that's kind of like the 2 big weaknesses of the initial way to kind of create angles, so keep that in mind. So for step 2, we're going to be covering head movement with chaining lunges. So in this case, it's going to be focusing on slips and chaining the major lunge right after you successfully evade a strike. So the easiest way and the safest way you can do this, if you're really good at predicting your opponent's strike, we're going to block the first strike, which is going to be a jab, jab, cross. Right, so block the jab. Then I'm going to slip the second one. I'm going to slip it to the outside. And I'm going to major lunge to the outside of Pedro Munoz's lead leg. And I'm going to get this special pivot animation. He's going to lunge right by me. And if I wanted to, I can hit him with a counter strike. Be in mind, if you're inputting the lunge and you're holding R2, the counter will come out slower. So if you want to have full confidence and you're not holding block, then your counter is going to come out fast. And even if you mess up the timing, right? If you know where your opponent is throwing, the lunge itself is going to save you. So keep that in mind. Don't panic if like a little jab hits you or something. Just get your timing better, practice a lot more, and it'll be under your belt, and you'll be able to hit this on anybody. You can also do this against overhand. So I already showed you the first way you can do it, when you slip and you continue to walk to that side. But if you slip and you major lunge to that side, you actually get that special animation. I prefer to go to the body after hitting that, because sometimes to the head it gets a little bit wonky depending on the height. And you can also do this against combos as well. So my opponent's throwing a jab, cross, lead hook. It's the first regular animation, but if I time it a specific way, I get this little pivot animation, kind of like shoulder bump into him a little bit. Although pivots kind of messes up Munoz's cross, and I'm safe away from that lead hook, right? Because he's still on that specific center line. He's still trying to turn and face me, and that rear hook is there and it's open for me. Even right here, right? I'm just going to show you all types of strikes are open for you, and I always prefer the hooks off of these pivot lunges. This also works against like the 1-2 head kick and the body kick as well, because you're also taking like your lower body off of the center line as well, right? So even if he's going jab straight, body kick, jab straight, head kick, or even jab straight leg kick, once I'm to the outside of his shoulder, right? I'm outside of his shoulder and I'm continuing to walk to that side, I'm safe. And obviously the bigger commitment to whatever strike they choose after you successfully committed to this pivot lunge, the better window of opportunity there's for you. So in open stance matchups, same thing applies, right? So if I want to get the special pivot animation against like the jab, jab, cross here, for example, same thing. I'm just going to slip to the outside. This case, I'm going up, like I'm major lunging up because I'm slipping that way. And if I slip to the inside, right, it's a little bit harder. Notice I didn't get the animation there. But it's all about timing. And then now I'm starting to get that little special pivot lunge animation. It's definitely a lot harder, I've noticed, for me personally, when it's like an open stance matchup. But even against like combination like jab, cross, the hook, right, boom, right there, off the center line, all those feet moving. There, I didn't get the animation in school, didn't get it there, but I'm still avoiding it, right? So, the looks and everything. And if I want to, I can just blast out whatever counter I want. I'd always prefer the rear hand when it comes to open stance matchups. I think it's just a little bit more damage. And Munoz has a freaking chin on him, which is why I chose him for this too. And plus, although Munoz are fighting soon, just saying. And it's a big one. And for me, the best one to create the best angle is the duck pivot lunge. Not only because I think it's the best one, because it can avoid a lot more than you think. Now, you probably have already figured out that if you're using the slip, you're going to be vulnerable to hooks, right? So I'm going to throw jab, lead hook, rear hook. So this duck pivot lunge, it is extremely good. Really, your only concern with any lunge is obviously going to be the threat of leg kicks, but with proper timing, when it comes to like dodging somebody's punches, it is absurdly good. Like right there, I blocked the first strike, I ducked underneath the hook, and I'm pivoting out, creating an angle, and he cannot touch me with that rear hook. There's a good gif, however the hell you pronounce it, with Canelo, where he hit something like this in the middle of his fight, and he's like in the matrix with this lead hook, right? Munoz is still in that same center line, although stepping back, and he is away from the rear hook. That is beautifully done. I wish I could have expanded upon this a lot more. So even if they tries to throw like a jab, lead hook, rear uppercut with proper timing, right? I'm gonna duck and I'm gonna lunge to that side. Whoop! Heads right out of the way. I'm not gonna get touched by that. It's crazy good. This can also avoid like spinning elbows and whatnot. It can avoid some crazy stuff if you time it correctly. You can also do it against jabs and crosses too with good timing. Right, it's gonna duck right underneath the cross, right? Because you're aiming for my head. You're aiming for my head. So when you have somebody who's head hunting, you want to make them whiff, and you also want to hit them. You want to discourage them from hitting you. And once you start throwing out some absurd counters off of this, it's just, it's just money. So like a couple more examples here, right? Like, all right, say he's trying to throw jab, cross, lead uppercut. I'm fine. That lead uppercut's not going to touch me. and whatever I want to land from there, I'm gonna try. But the biggest thing too with this video, like, you want to practice. You want to have perfect practice. You can't just practice, hit it 1 or 2 times and think you're good. You want to be able to try and hit it consistently. Like, even now, I can hit it in live time, but I don't do it consistently 100% of the time, and that's okay. You know, don't get frustrated if something doesn't work the first time. You know, practice and just see what works. So here, like an opposite stance, right? You want to kind of lunge to the outside of the lead leg, right? Because if I'm lunging that way, right, after a lead hook or a jab, then I get the animation that I want. If I want to do it against the rear side, it's a little bit harder, I've noticed. I guess it's kind of possible against if Munoz threw a rear hook, but didn't really want to dig too deep into that. But you guys can feel free to do so. But more importantly, with these pivot lunges, there's no, outside of anything extremely broken, there's nothing that's going to be this one thing in striking that's going to help you elevate your game. But if you add this to your arsenal and you consistently hit this defensively, counter offensively, whatever the way it is that you like to play, it makes the game a lot more fun. It makes the game a lot more fun for me. You know, I've said what I've said about the game with my last few recent videos, but when it comes to this, I'm really happy that they were actually able to add something like this in. And yeah, like, these pivot lunges are fun. They're fun. Has you feeling like you're in the Matrix, and it's just in for a good time. So don't be afraid to experiment. Go on Quick Fight. Fight your friends, do whatever you can. You know, if you haven't already subscribed and you're on my channel, you're watching my videos, I really would appreciate you subscribing. Of course, this Saturday, we're going to be dropping a members only video. So if you're on the members tier list, you know, you got a little something special coming for y'all when it comes for like the hidden meta, for little things that I like to do that not a lot of people like to know about. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to replay it back, watch it in slow-mo, understand the positioning of where I am when I'm hitting these certain moves, and add to your game. Remember 17? I'm out of here.